had 2 others published. This is my 3rd published, probably my 5th or 6th that I've written. I have several at home that you know, only I've seen or close friends or cousins have read. I think it's my best, and it's, you know, it's doing the best. Getting in more stores than the other ones, certainly. Growing up in the South End, I went to DeSales High School, grew up by Iroquois Park. I was always fascinated with Waverly Hills, and all the kids in my class, and especially in high school, they talked about it being an insane asylum, which it wasn't, and a lot of them broke into it. That was the big thing to do on weekends sometimes, is to break into Waverly. I never broke in. I waited till it was legal to go, but I was always fascinated with it, mostly because of the ghosts and the haunts, and you know, I wanted to know what it was about. So I finally did go and visit it about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was just kind of blown away by the architecture and just how massive the building was. And I went into it fully wanting to write something scary. You know, I wanted to scare the pants off of whoever read it, but you know, once I saw it, and then I kind of standing there, kind of got a sense of the history and the patients and all of that. The Requiem Rose kind of started developing in my head. I remember standing on the 4th floor solarium porch, looking out over the woods and the trees, and just kind of, you know, said, you know, what if it is haunted, and I am surrounded by ghosts? You know, what's their story? And you know, I thought it'd be a lot more authentic to go back and, you know, think about, or you know, reimagine what it was like back then. And you know, I imagined hearing a violin playing, and you know, then I thought of the idea of healing through music, since they didn't really have a cure for TB at the time, and that's where the idea took off. I love music. My sister is a pianist, and I grew up, and me and my brothers, and we constantly hearing her play the piano, you know, song after song after song. And at the time, I think it was, we thought it was a little annoying. You know, we'd walk by her metronome and hit it and get that thing, you know, going back and forth real fast just to annoy her. But I think listening to her play, it all kind of seeped in over the years, and I really had an appreciation for classical music. You know, especially Mozart. You know, like listening to Mozart. I don't drive in my car listening to classical music, but I do like it, and I can write to it. So I think I developed an appreciation for it, you know, doing that and going to my sister's concerts and stuff like that. And you know, it also, back in the times of Requiem, you know, we didn't have rock music, so you know, I thought, you know, this is probably what they listened to back then. As far as research, I did a lot of it on the internet. You can find all kinds of stuff with Waverly. Most of it now is, you know, all the haunted and ghost type of things, but you know, I did find a lot on the history. Learned a lot on the tour. I was able to take a personal tour of the place about 5 years ago, so I learned a lot of the history of it then. And you know, a lot of it was, you know, I wanted to imagine it. A lot of the research I did for the book wasn't so much about Waverly. It was about tuberculosis in general, and about the 1920s in general. And I just hoped, you know, I got as many facts as I could and hoped that I was imagining it accurately. I have met a few of the patients that survived Waverly Hills, and I talked to one on the phone for a good 45 minutes. She said that I nailed most of it, so a lot of this stuff in there, I think, rang true. And she actually showed up at one of my book signings. She read the book in a day and felt like she was back at Waverly again. And I didn't know whether to thank her or apologize for making her feel that way, but she was very complimentary of what happened there. As far as me wanting to be a writer, I probably started around high school. I didn't even like to read going into high school. My sister was always big in trying to get me to read books, and I started reading a lot of Stephen King in high school. So that got me loving books. In college, I read a ton of books. I was probably reading a book a week, you know, outside of my schoolwork. But then I, you know, started thinking that, you know, I want to do this. So, you know, you're never going to be a writer unless you put pen to paper and start writing. So I did. So I started writing. And I've been working on it for 15, 16 years, and a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of ups. Well, not many ups, mostly downs. But I think it's starting to turn the corner and head in the right direction for me. I just found out last week that I won an IPPY Award, 2011 IPPY Award. and that's the Independent Publishers Book Award. And I'd totally forgotten. I had so much going on that I was up for it. But then I heard the other night, and they're supposed to have some kind of thing in New York for it on the 23rd, which I won't be able to go to. But it was a big deal. It was a pleasant surprise. And, you know, I think a couple years ago we submitted another one of my books for it, and I never thought I'd win a Hippie, but Requiem brought me one. So writing is a very lonely job, because even if you tell someone about the idea, it's always difficult to tell it how you see it in your head. And tennis is a good balance where I can go to tennis and be social, whereas writing, it's just me. And I've always been kind of a manic writer. I'm not someone who has to sit down and write every single day, or I can't function. What I do a lot of times, I'll think of an idea or a movie or a book and be thinking about it for months, and then but once I start writing, it's day and night, and I write quickly. But once it's finished, or that draft's finished, I might not write for 2 months. So it kind of goes in spurts. I don't have to do it every day, and nor I think I could. And with Requiem, I think the first few drafts of it, I sent it to New York to some agents, and I had some of them love it. And they, you know, one of them said, I really love this story, but it reads too much like a very well done screenplay, which is, I mean, I'm having a little success with screenplays now too. I think I fleshed Requiem out a lot since the first draft. I think after the 5 drafts or so, it was probably 250 pages. The manuscript ended up being 400. And it wasn't just that I started, you know, just adding stuff to add stuff. I always think of the first draft as kind of a skeleton, and then you kind of, you know, build it up as you go. In each draft, you kind of weave storylines in and out, and plot and stuff like that. But they just kind of grew and to what it is. With Requiem, for whatever reason, I was able to add, and that was much easier. It was time consuming, but I was able to add characters and add plot, and so that wasn't bad at all. Now, like with movies, a lot of times it's painful to take stuff out because it's so tight to begin with. But with books, you just have a lot more leeway. Well, I've written several screenplays. My latest one is a tennis comedy feature film called Tan Lines, and it's being produced by Gil Holland, and we're shooting in Louisville. You know, you write something, you try to find an agent, they try to sell it. Maybe you get an advance, maybe you don't. I bet the advances are probably getting less and less, and it's probably going more on royalties, because, you know, they actually, you know, if they're going to take a chance on a new author, they want to see you sell books for them, and, you know, before they start giving you money. So I'm sure the advances have gone down. I think the biggest thing with the book industry is just and you can see it with Borders going bankrupt, which hurt me a little bit, but is the whole, you know, ebook thing. I think Borders was probably a little late getting on the ebook train, and that probably hurt him a little bit. But you know, the whole ebook thing, period, is going to hurt bookstores in general, just because, you know, the books in the stores aren't leaving like they used to because everybody's downloading them. Now, I don't think that'll kill the industry, because there's so many people out there who refuse, and, you know, who have both, and they just like to have a book in their hands. But, you know, I'm one of them. I don't think I'll ever have a Kindle or an e-reader, but you never know. I still enjoy sitting down and reading the real thing. Requiem isn't available on e-reader, so yeah, I guess with an author who has all the formats, it's not as big a deal, because there's readers out there who are going to read them anyways. But with mine, you know, I've had several people at book signings come up and say, I want my book club to read your book because I loved it, but we only read Kindles, or we only read this and that. And I was like, sorry, I just don't have it on e-format. It's something that could be done. It's just, would it be worth it for the publisher to do it? And at this point, we don't know if it would be worth it or not. But they've just been awesome. Carol Butler runs it. Her late husband, Bill, is the one I was in first contact with. But they've just been fantastic. Carol's just great to work with, and, you know, anything I want, she's always there. A funny story about Bill before he passed away. I was shopping Requiem around, and I was close with some publishers. It ended up, you know, not happening as it does in the publishing world. And I went into, well, I emailed Bill and told him, I said, told him about myself and said I have a Waverly Hills novel, and he said, let's get together. So I met with him a few days later, and he said, this is amazing. Just last week I had the manager at Barnes & Noble at the Summit who said, Bill, get me a Waverly book. And there I was a week later, contacted him with the Waverly book. And then I was talking with Bill for a while we were working on it. He mentioned, okay, we got Requiem, give me a ghost book. So that's how I kind of thought about Jonah and that whole series. So that the Jonah series is more of a ghost type of Waverly thing as opposed to Requiem being more historical based. The first book is finished, and I was hoping to have it out this Halloween, but it's not going to happen. Let's see, Jonah lived from 1910 to 1939, and he has a Marfan's disease, of connective tissue disorder disease, and he's really tall and lanky, really long fingers, and he paints with his fingers. He ends up being, a really famous painter. But the whole premise behind that series is Jonah died in 1939 at Waverly. He's been a ghost for 70 years. And unlike most ghosts, he's learned how to hold a pen and write, despite the tingle that I say that all ghosts have. I'm just kind of making up my ghost world. And over the last 70 years, Jonah has traveled the world penning the stories of other ghosts. And he keeps all those stories under lock and key in the basement at Waverly. That's the premise to it all. And then there's kind of you got Jonah, a story that goes forward with Jonah, and then you have all the books that he's written for other ghosts. And the time spans can range from ancient Rome to current day. And the idea behind it is mostly historical based stories from other ghosts. And obviously I haven't written all those yet. I have ideas of time periods and maybe some characters, but I haven't actually written those out. That's also a tough thing, thinking, okay, could be an infinite amount of stories, but we'll see what I can do.